welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Kristen, this is my booktube, and in today's video we are going to be talking about one specific book that I have wanted to talk about for a while, but I've been psyching myself out about it because it is a very important book and I am so afraid that I'm going to not articulate myself well or get my points across effectively when I speak about the book. But today we are going to bite the bullet and talk about it because it is a book that is gaining momentum, gaining popularity, at least in the spaces on the internet that I tend to go to. And it is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akkad. And if you've been around my channel, you will know that I read this book, or at least started reading it back in, I believe, May, and I finished it a couple weeks ago. I think late June, early July, if I remember right. And then when I went to London this past week, I did end up picking up a copy of it. I just like this cover way more than I like the US one, because this cover and the sentiments on the front of the cover are really what made me want to read it in the first place. So I really wanted this specific cover, which I believe is the UK version of the cover. Maybe it's just the hardback cover, but I've only ever seen the cover with the sketch on it of the little girl with the bomb falling over her. And so when I was in London, I decided to hunt this cover down so that I could have this copy at hand while I talk about it. I read it on my Kindle initially, and so I was able to have all my Kindle highlights and things in Goodreads. So if you're interested in what bits I highlighted a lot in this book. There are a lot of really good quotable moments in this book that I flagged when I was reading it, and I have made them public on Goodreads, so if you're interested in the bits that I highlighted, you can find my Goodreads link in the description below and see it there. But for those who are not familiar with this book, this is a book that aims to grapple with the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian population that is being perpetrated and continued by the Israeli government, and really talks about the daily atrocities that are happening and how it is very difficult to continue leading a normal life while all of these horrific events are being basically live streamed 24/7 for anyone willing to see. This is a very emotional book, as you would expect. At least it made me feel quite emotional. And the cover reads, "One day, when it's safe, when there's no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will have always been against this." And as someone who studied history and has a master's degree in history, that is a phrase that really resonated with me, because that is something that happens with pretty much every atrocity that has happened in human history. When we talk about other genocides, whether it be the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, or different apartheid regimes like apartheid South Africa, this sentiment is something that often pops up in the aftermath of the dismantling of the evils that have perpetuated those events and systems of oppression. Whether it be people who just didn't see the event as important enough to really dig into and invest their time in trying to understand. In all of those events, there are always people who, after the dust has settled, without ever having made any sort of statement or really showing any allegiance either way, or even the extreme of being on the side of the oppressors, then switching sides once the dust has settled and saying that they have always been against X atrocity. Because it is difficult to stand up for what you think is right when public opinion is not in your favor, when it's not a popular thing to do. This is going to be such a random tangent, but I was watching 10 Things I Hate About You on the plane ride back from London, and I noticed in the background of one of the scenes in the English class that there was a sign. It said something along the lines of, "What's popular is not always right, and what's right is not always popular." And I feel like that is very closely related to what this book is getting at, that it is so much easier to just fall in line with the popular opinion, to turn a blind eye and pretend that it's not happening because it's not happening right here, right now. But especially for Americans, it is very important to not just turn a blind eye. And if you really don't know much about US foreign policy and what the US government does, then you may be thinking that, well, I live in America, so what does this have to do with me? It's happening thousands of miles away between two different groups of people that have nothing to do with me. And the reason why it's so important for someone like me and like Americans in general to read this book and really come face to face with the content of the book that will make you feel uncomfortable is the fact that our US tax dollars are funding the Israeli army. And it's not just America that's complicit. Other governments in the Western world are also backing Israel, though it is diminishing as the atrocities go on and it becomes more and more obvious that this is an ethnic cleansing campaign, that there is no safe place for the people of Palestine to go where they are not under direct threat from the Israeli government of immediate annihilation. So it's very important, even though this is a very uncomfortable book, to learn about those things, to know exactly what part you as an American citizen play in these atrocities going on halfway around the world. Because as the author says in this book, it is so much easier to just put your head down and pretend that it's not happening. And he talks about how turning your eyes away from the atrocities is like a muscle. And the first time you do it, it's hard to do because you know that it's wrong. But as you do it more and more, it becomes easier to turn a blind eye to whatever's going on, to the point where you're excusing more and more from the people in power that are perpetuating these systems, and a complete failing of humanity just because it is not happening directly in front of you or to you directly. And the tide has shifted quite a bit in recent months. Definitely, I could sense it way more in the UK than in the US, at least in London. I didn't travel outside of London, but I saw so many people protesting in front of 10 Downing Street where the Prime Minister lives. I saw so many stickers just stuck random places talking about boycotting Israel and boycotting the apartheid. So it's clear to see that the sentiments are shifting, and as these sentiments start to shift, we start to see more and more people start to speak out against these atrocities. And as I spoke about a few months ago, when this book first came across my timeline, I really wanted to read it because I feel as a historian that I often have looked back on other horrific events in history in a similar vein and thought to myself that if I was there when this was happening, I would have been one of the people that would have stood against it and made my voice heard about how I do not support this and how it needs to end. And so now when a genocide is happening directly in front of me and I see evidence of it every day, I had to make a conscious decision to not be one of the people that just sticks their head in the sand and pretends that it's not happening, or tries to claim that it's a war where there's fighting on both sides. There is no fighting on both sides when one side is able to completely shut off the borders and starve an entire population. That is not a war. That is an intentional act of starvation to eradicate a population of people. That is the motivation, and you don't need a degree to be able to see that. You don't have to have an intimate knowledge of the rise of fascism in Nazi Germany to know that this is fascism, that this is an ethnic cleansing that is targeted against an entire population of people. And it's just getting more depraved, more horrific, and honestly, more disgusting. And I have spent so long trying to figure out the best way to talk about this, the best way to frame myself so that I can talk about it and be informed. And the problem with that is that I don't know if I will ever feel qualified to speak at length on a topic like this. But that doesn't mean that I should just not speak at all. So instead of doing that, instead of waiting to make this video until I feel like I am able to speak at length and be basically a scholar on the topic, I don't want that to stop me from saying anything at all, because that's worse. Because it's worse to see it happening and not say anything than it is to make a video like this where I may not know everything and may have a chance of misspeaking. I know what a genocide looks like. I know what ethnic cleansing looks like. And it's not anti-Semitic to say that the Israeli government is perpetuating an ethnic cleansing and is actively committing genocide against the Palestinian people. It is recognized by the UN. It's recognized by the International Criminal Court of Justice. There are warrants out for Netanyahu's arrest. Officials in the Israeli government are war criminals, according to the ICC. It is not radical to say that these people are evil and these people are trying to eradicate an entire race of people who just simply want to exist in their homeland where they have lived for thousands of years. It is not radical to say that children should have food. It is not radical to say that bombing hospitals is wrong. None of this is radical to say. What is radical is continuing to support the Israeli government, is continuing to be silent, to stick your head in the sand just because it's not directly affecting you right now. It's not radical to say that politicians signing their names on bombs that are literally going to be dropped on children in a foreign country is disgusting. That is not radical at all, in my opinion. It's sane, if anything. It is the sane opinion to have. And I believe that anyone with an ounce of empathy would be able to see that as well. I have friends who have family in Palestine. And even if I didn't know people that are from those areas, I would think that just seeing the facts laid out in front of you would be enough to come to the same conclusion. And I think that this book does an amazing job of explaining the kind of craziness almost that you feel when you see all of this going on and you know that it's wrong. You know that it is a direct display of crimes against humanity and of how crazy you feel of seeing a live stream genocide and then you turn on the news and politicians are saying that it's not happening. That is absolutely maddening. And I believe it's a quote from the book 1984 that talks about how the final stage in the rise of an authoritarian regime is them telling you to ignore the evidence of what you see in front of you. And I'm not going to ignore what I see in front of me. They try to say that the videos and things are AI generated or that it's not really happening, that it's being spun in the wrong way, that the people destroying the food that's waiting to get into Gaza are actually trying to help get the food into Gaza, but other people are the ones that are stopping them from doing it, and they cut the footage just so to make it look like they're bringing food in rather than bringing it away and destroying it. And all of this propaganda just makes you feel more and more insane and disenfranchised and despondent, honestly. It makes me feel like there's nothing that I can do. But there is something I can do. This is what I can do. I can sit down and I can speak about it. I can add my voice to the sea of people that is growing every day who are saying that this is wrong, it always has been wrong. And I may not have said it online, but people in my personal life have known that since basically October 8th of 2023, when I knew virtually nothing about Israel's history of oppressing Palestinians. Even back then, I was saying in casual conversations with my friends that what the Israeli government says and what they do are at odds with each other, and the only reason that would make sense is if they are trying to ethnically cleanse a population. And I'm sure that there will be people that probably watch this video and just want to call me an anti-Semite because I don't approve of the Israeli government. And that is not true. And that's actually a very dangerous conflation to make. The actions of the Israeli government do not represent Judaism as a whole. And that kind of conflation is exactly what the Israeli government wants to have happen, because no one wants to be labeled an anti-Semite. And there is definitely anti-Semitism that is rampant, but taking issue with what the Israeli government is doing is not anti-Semitic. Calling for an end to a genocide is not anti-Semitic. There are many, many Jewish anti-Zionists who have been speaking out against the actions of the Israeli government for decades, not even just since October 7th, 2023, going back decades. Scholars like Norm Finkelstein, Avi Shlaim, Ben from Ben and Jerry's. There are so many notable Jewish people that are anti-Zionist because they can see exactly what the Israeli government is doing and how they are using the media and the propaganda machine to spin the narrative in their favor. And largely it has worked for decades. I believe that the difference now has a lot to do with the age of the internet and the fact that journalists and just regular civilians in Gaza and in Rafah and in these areas that are being systemically bombed and moved and completely shut off from the outside world. They are able to get their stories out on the internet in a way that was not possible 20 years ago. And I genuinely believe that that is a big part of why the tide is shifting now. But even though the tide is shifting, that doesn't mean that the work is done. That doesn't mean that everything is good now, because even as I record this, there are still blockades all around Gaza. Food cannot get in. They have been starving the population for months at this point. Innocent people are dying every day because of the actions of the Israeli government. And I know that it is overwhelming to try to parse through all of the nuances of what is going on. And it can be overwhelming, and that can be a big factor as to why people just turn a blind eye and look away and don't engage or try to understand what's going on. But I can't in good conscience do that, and I strongly suggest that you don't either. I know that a lot of people that I know that watch my videos and stuff are well aware of all of this, and they have read the books that I've read. So this is just me preaching to the choir for them. But hopefully this video can reach someone who just needs that extra push to really become invested in stopping this. And for that person, I would recommend this book. I gave this book 5 stars. It felt weird rating this book in general, because how do you rate a nonfiction book that is grappling with trying to do what you can to stop a genocide any less than 5 stars? How do you do that, you know? Like, I read some of the reviews that people had, and they had issues with the way that it was structured, how the author kind of jumps back and forth between past events in his own life and the present things that are going on. But I think that's what makes it so human. That's what makes it so relatable, you know? Because that's how the human brain works. It makes connections between your own personal life and what you see going on in the world around you. And I think that it is brilliantly written in that way. And I can't recommend this book enough. It is a tough read, I will say. It is an emotional read, but it is very short. It is under 200 pages. The audiobook is available pretty much everywhere. I listened to the audiobook on Spotify while I read along on my Kindle. And if that feels like too much for you, go to YouTube. Watch Omar's interviews that he has done on his press tour for this book. Listen to him speak about the book and everything surrounding it. Do what you can to educate yourself and learn about what is going on and how you may inadvertently be playing a role in it without even realizing it. I believe it's towards the end of the book where the author talks about doing what you can when you can, when it comes to talking about the genocide of the Palestinian people. And he uses the metaphor of throwing sand into the gears of a machine. And he says, do what you can to stop the gears of genocide. Throw whatever sand you can, whether it be a handful or a fingernail full. Whatever you can do to stop the cogs of this machine from turning is worth doing. Writing letters to your representatives, calling their offices, making your voice heard that you do not support the use of your tax dollars going towards funding a genocide. I know that it feels like it's not enough. And in the grand scheme of things, yeah, a few people doing that is not enough. But the more people that do it, the more pressure that is put on these people who do have the power to make a change, the better. You can even see it in the way that the reporting has changed over time, the way that officials have talked about Gaza and Palestinians. Because as public opinion shifts, so does the verbiage surrounding what they are doing. And the more public pressure that is put on the people who actually have the power to put an end to, at the very least, funding the genocide, the better. This book is probably the single most important book that I have read, not even just this year, probably in the last 5 or so years. And I want to recommend this book to as many people as I can because it is that important. I fully recommend this book. I think everyone should read this book. It is not only beautifully written, but it does a great job of capturing the feeling of watching the horrors unfold in front of you while feeling like you can't do anything about it, yet you still try to do what you can where you can. So yeah, that was really rambly and a lot off the cuff thoughts because I forgot my notebook. So these were mostly just thoughts off the top of my head that I wanted to share. And yeah, genocide is wrong no matter where it happens or to whom it's happening. Ethnic cleansing is wrong no matter where it happens or who it's happening to. And I will always be against any government that doesn't believe that. And I will always be against any government that commits a genocide, that willingly and knowingly starves an entire population of people in an attempt to eradicate them from existence. So yeah, that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. I know this is a lot more serious and a very heavy video in general, but this is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while now. And rather than trying to be a perfectionist about it and script it to death to the point where I just end up procrastinating even more because I don't think what I'm saying is good enough, I wanted to just get on here and tell you exactly what I thought about this book and how I feel about the topics that it deals with. That is pretty much it for this video. If you liked it, go ahead and leave a like down below. Let me know. If you have other books that you would like to recommend in a similar vein to this one, go ahead and leave those in the comments below as well. I think my next book that I want to read in this vein is Three Worlds by Avi Shlaim. I have seen that book talked about several places, and I believe I found the ebook for like $2 somewhere, so I have it on my Kindle ready to go. And yeah, I want to dive into that one next and just continue educating myself because I am nothing if not a lifelong learner, so that'll be my next endeavor. But yeah, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.